This is Tim.
I'm Mulele.
And this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim with Mulele in Tokyo. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. It's a bit cold and it's supposed to snow tonight.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've got a couple comics to talk about. The first one was submitted to us as a PDF. It's called Invasion from Planet Wrestletopia, #1. Written by Ed the Carnage Artist Kuehnel and Masculine Matt Entin. Art by Dan the Body Schkade, if I'm pronouncing that right, from Suspicious Behavior Productions. Now, I'm not big into wrestling. I realized as I was reading this that at this point I've actually read more comics about wrestling than I've actually watched wrestling. Anyway, this story starts in 1984. Although it starts, well, it actually starts out with a scene in 1999, and then it jumps back 15 years, it says, which would be 84. So I guess sort of the golden age of wrestling in the U.S. Basically, the main character, this rock and roll Rory Landell, in 84 he seems to be at the top of his game, but he keeps talking about quitting too, which I didn't quite follow. I mean, it seems like 1 minute he's like really, into the wrestling, and another minute he's like about to quit. So, didn't quite make sense to me. But then, in 99, what happens is this claim that he made in 84 that he was the champion of the universe reaches Planet Wrestletopia, and the ruler of that planet, who's called Manifest Destiny, thinks he needs to take on Rory. But by this time, Rory is all washed up. And so we've got the setup for the next issue where apparently washed up Rory is going to have to take on a wrestler who's at this point stronger than he is. So the art in this is not bad. I had a few questions about sort of the storytelling of it, but I mean, as art, it's fine. It's professional quality, I would say. I guess my biggest question about the storytelling was sort of how the artist used the real estate in one or two places. On the 20th page of the PDF, which is numbered as page 18 on the actual page, so the woman who I took it to be the same woman that he was dating, who he was making out with earlier in the comic, where at that point she's just wearing a bathrobe, but she's got the same thing on her head. It's kind of a Carmen Miranda fruit basket on her head. On page 20, well, Rory has just gone storming out of the building, and she's in her wrestling costume, and when she looks out the door where he has just stormed out, it's this huge panel, and I didn't understand why that panel needed to be so big. It didn't seem like that significant of a event. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think it's just the cut of the plot landed wrong, or maybe the artist didn't quite know what to do with the space he had been given, but it does kind of fall flat. But I mean, really, there's no reason for this page at all, because that first character, if they're just going to throw her to the side so the hero can go in search of whatever he would rather do, why give her this shot at all? I mean, maybe they want us to know that she's going to be back in another issue, but in the next scene, a couple of scenes later, actually, when the wrestler actually is on the road, they're talking about how he banged a hooker.
Well, remember, that's 15 years later.
Oh, that is 15 years later? Okay,
yeah, because she's that scene where she's looking out the door is back in 1984, and then we see that signal of him, trash talking on TV and saying he's the champion.
Right.
And that signal is traveling out into space, and then the next page it says December 1999.
Okay.
And he's drinking and he's losing to a little guy in a wrestling match, and then he's on the road with his manager.
Yeah, it didn't quite play for me that well. The difference in times didn't register quite clearly. In fact, I missed that one where on the next page it says 1999, December 1999.
Yeah, I was confused too. I was looking around on YouTube trying to figure out how to pronounce the names of the creators of the comic, and there were several different YouTube reviews of the comic, and watching one of those explained the chronology of the story, what was happening, and okay. Yeah, I kind of missed it too. You really have to pay attention to those caption boxes, or else it's kind of hard to follow.
Yeah, none of the artwork is that that explicit. The details are soft, and so there's no difference to me between the guy with the mullet in 84 and the guy with the mullet in 99. So, to be honest, some of the shots of the guy in 84 when he's being interviewed by the announcer don't look like either of them, really. Especially when he winks and points at the camera. That does not look like the same guy who was in the dressing room making out with the girl, or the guy who gets beaten up by the midget.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Somehow he looks a little different.
Yeah, so there's some problems there. The story, I should say that the artwork in general is professional. Professional as in it does the job. Nothing's too confusing. One or two spots where it's like, okay, I wouldn't necessarily give that character that much real estate, like you said, page 20. But it's very simplistic. There's not a lot of detail here. There's not a lot of focus on any of the minutia of the sport or of storytelling. It's just basic.
At least I think one good thing about the art is that it's not so, we've seen a lot of really stiff art in some of these comics, and this has more of a flow to it. That it feels a little more active, which is good for a comic about wrestling, especially. It has a little life to it.
Well, the artist knows what he's doing storytelling-wise, except for those one or two spots. It's very well done. Everything flows very well, and I think it's fine. Now, story-wise, I wasn't very interested in the comic. I'm not a wrestling fan. And so whether it's terrestrial wrestling or intergalactic wrestling, I really don't care. And it doesn't matter that the space creatures that he wrestles are fantastic or not. It's just not that interesting of a story concept. And even if it's later a thing more about redeeming yourself after years of fucking up, it's also not very interesting to me. I've got my own story on that. That's fucking my life. So yeah, it held nothing for me. And even the fact that, or not fact, but my suspicion is that what we've got actually is a Sleeping Beauty story in the guise of intergalactic wrestling. But my only reason for thinking that is the bad guy at the end says, the stars, they speak to me, Adrian Polaris. They say many things, the stars, yet in one voice each cries out in unison, which I have problems with, that line. But anyway, there can be only one galactic champion, and it shall be me. Manifest Destiny. I kind of got the vibe of a mirror, who's the fairest of them all kind of thing. Or Highlander, if you want to do that. But still, I'm not interested in any of that stuff. For me, this is a finally done comic. Story-wise, it works. The artwork works. Everything works as it should. There's just nothing of interest for me. There's no growth in the art that I can see. There's no growth in the story, no sense of discovery, nothing. It's a commercial venture.
Kind of by the numbers.
Yeah. I mean, these people are not fucking up. Not by a long shot. But there's just nothing for it. Nothing for me here. It's a comic about intergalactic wrestling and redemption.
By the way, in that last scene, Manifest Destinies, he's looking out the window at the city. It's a scene we've seen in a lot of different works, and this guy who apparently works for him comes in, and this guy looks kind of effeminate. And he looks to me straight out of like Sailor Moon Supers. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, I don't know.
Sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not a fan of Sailor Moon, but
but what puzzled me is on the first page of that, page 32 of the PDF, he says a word, your championess, but Manifest Destiny doesn't appear to be female. I didn't get why it was championess.
I think it's a bastardization of or combination of champion and highness.
That must be it. But yeah, that ESS suggests femininity, so...
I think they're just kind of running with that one. But really, sorry, this comic is not for me.
It should have been, if that's what he was thinking, it should have been championess, like N-NESS. Then it would have been clearer. But yeah, a championess is a female champion, not a champion king. Okay.
Well, it's like Americans don't use were, as in if I were you. The language is changing.
I guess so. He's making a new word here, but I don't know. Anyway, it's a minor point.
He and Shakespeare both.
So yeah, I agree with what you're saying, that it feels kind of we've seen all kinds of similar stories to this, and it's not clear that it's going to break any new ground.
Well, there's no oddball detail. There's no like, oh shit, he really switched it up there, or he's struggling, but I see what he's going for. Let me see if he can actually make it. There's none of that, because it is by the numbers, and it does hit all the beats that it has to hit in a first issue. It's a business thing. It's a business venture. There's not there's no struggle of personal vision that I see of anyone involved with the comic. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the writers out there like, fuck, this is my dream book, man. I want to make intergalactic wrestling comics, and maybe this is his thing. Maybe for the artist, it's like, this is my shot. I wanted to make a wrestling book since forever, but I'm not seeing that. So, for me, there's nothing.
Okay, well, shall we move on?
Sure, I'm done.
So last year, Irrational Comics sent us or recommended to us their pitch page with 5 comics of 8 pages each that are done as a opportunity for people who want to write comics but can't find an artist to get the first 8 pages drawn by an artist who is paid by Irrational Comics, and get their work up, and then people can vote for which of the 5 comics they'd like to see continue. And they've sent us this year's version. So we're going to do like we did last year and kind of break it up over podcast episodes. So we're going to talk about the first one today and then do the other 4 2 apiece over the next 2 episodes. So this one is called Dreamtime by Shaun Kang, who's from Singapore. And as the name might suggest, this is inspired by Australian Aboriginal mythology. And I have to say, what we just said about the other comic, I think applies to this one too. It feels like something I've seen before. Well, actually, Kang himself called it like Constantine with animal spirits instead of the occult. It actually made me think of a TV show concept, kind of like Ghost Whisperer.
Okay.
Have you ever seen that?
No.
Well, it was Jennifer Love Hewitt, and she was someone who could see ghosts, and she would be able to talk to the ghosts and find out, like who killed them, or get whatever details nobody else could get from living people. And so in this case, we have a guy who doesn't appear to be an Australian Aborigine. He appears to be a white guy. But he has this power to use the Aboriginal Dreamtime state to solve crimes. And so we open with a couple of detectives, a man and a woman, who they keep finding these dried up corpses of people, and they can't figure it out, so they contact him, and it turns out, or they figure out that the murderer is also using the Dreamtime state, which to me seemed like kind of blowing your wad all the first go. I mean, if this is going to be a series, I think I'd like to see sort of a normal case first, and then kind of move up to now we're up against somebody who has the same powers, rather than doing. I mean, if you're going to do it here, then maybe it's just going to be a one-off, like a graphic novel, and then it's over. Go ahead.
I kind of see the problem. I understand what you're saying, and perhaps that would be um, a better way to handle it. But I mean, this writer for this project has 8 pages, and he spends a lot of time um, building up towards the hero coming into the story. And the story kind of ends where or I should say the comic ends where the story begins.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's on the hunt for the bad guy. And we know there's something supernatural here, but having only 8 pages to do that, and you really don't have time to set up a first investigation, then a second investigation, because you'd have the first investigation done and that'd be it, and it'd be
sure
a complete story rather than a concept. But I mean, my feeling was that there needed to be a lot more research here in the writing, because we have the basic elements all in place. Cops are at the scene of a body dump. The body is weird. They're stumped. They call in the specialist, who reluctantly answers the call. And yeah, it's a supernatural crime. So, supernatural detective on the case. It's essentially it. But the dialogue, the descriptions of what's happening with the body and the procedural stuff is all missing. It's like he remembered somebody saying something like this on TV or in a movie, but couldn't quite remember what they said there, but kind of made it up here. Now, for example, the cop in the first panel of the first page refers to his unit as Detail 1. And cops usually don't use detail they don't divide into details. Or at least that's not what they call them. So he says Detail 1 to HQ. It looks like we've got another one of those. There's nothing in that sentence that a cop would actually say to HQ. It's HQ dealing with other things around the city, other investigations. One of those does not mean anything. So the way that cop talks to HQ, supposed to help set up the situation. The way the two plainclothes cops talk to each other is a bit weird. The way they describe the body is weird. Later, when they're talking to the hero on page 5, they describe the body as a blood-deficient corpse of a middle-aged male tourist from out of town.
Okay.
A tourist from out of town.
As opposed to a local tourist?
I kind of, yeah, I was stuck on that too. But also a blood-deficient corpse. Like, how much blood should a corpse have? If he bled out, fine. But, I mean, the first thing a doctor checks is, yes, he has the correct amount of blood in his body. I mean, he's dead. Not looking for how much blood he had.
Yeah, usually somebody who's deficient in something, you're still alive and you need to get more of that thing.
Yeah, but a corpse does not need blood to be a corpse, and that's my point. It's not a blood-deficient corpse. It's a cause of death was maybe exsanguination. He lost blood. He bled out.
I might expect it to be a bloodless corpse. That would be
a detail in how he died, rather than it's just the phrasing is just weird on a lot of these things. And so it just needed a lot more research. Even watching an American whodunit, Australian whodunit, a cop procedural show, any of that stuff would have given him a lot more information on how to handle this stuff. Because it just seems a little too unresearched. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not quite getting how you use Dreamtime to solve murders, because doesn't seem like, I mean, I didn't do any research about Dreamtime, but I was thinking it was just sort of like a meditative state. And I suppose what he maybe asks the spirits what's going on. I don't know. It doesn't quite click for me. How do you use Dreamtime to do that?
I don't know, but it looks like in the comic he sniffs the corpse and gets a vision. It reminded me of Chew.
Yeah.
Chews the corpse and he gets a vision.
Take a bite out of it.
Yeah. So I wasn't looking for any sort of particular definition of Dreamtime which coincides with reality or other stories or mythology. I was just taking it at face value, what I saw in the comic. But yeah, I don't know. I can see the concept, but the execution is a little bit off. Needs a little bit more research. Yeah.
Support us on Patreon and hear the conversation Mulele and I had after recording this episode, including an update on Mulele's latest dealings with his former employer. Comics, not so much, but in case you're wondering what's going on, I'm going to make this available to all patrons giving at least $1 a month, so you have no excuse. Support us and get the latest scoop on the shenanigans that the English school tried to pull in court. Go to patreon.com/deconcomics and sign up to support us with a monthly donation. Now back to the show. Recently, we were talking about all the comics we picked up at Kaigai Manga Festa and Comic Art Tokyo. And some of them were giving Mulele PTSD from his Eikaiwa English teaching in Japan days. And we got an email from Jeff Ellis, who was one of the guys. I'll read the message. He says, "Hey guys, thanks for the kind words. I'm the artist on Teach English in Japan. If the book gave you Eikaiwa PTSD, then mission accomplished." He says, "The series is currently on hiatus, but there are 3 more volumes in print, as well as on Comixology. I hope to give the series a proper ending in 2019 once I finish my current side project, Crossroads." So, so I guess they're setting out to give us PTSD.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about reading 3 or 4 more volumes of this. I mean, it was an interesting comic, and I am curious about some things, but I mean, maybe I need a little bit of distance between me and my past job.
Yeah, after you're rich and famous for making comics, then read this.
That'll be fine.
I forgot to mention, so this coming Thursday, as you listen to this, the 15th, is the deadline for voting on the pitch page. So there'll be a link to that if people want to read all the comics and vote. Also, this coming Thursday here in Tokyo, there's going to be an event. I'm not quite sure what to call it. It's sort of run through the website CANVAS, the sort of Tokyo chapter of it. So Julia and Felipe, who we met at Kaigai and Cat, have been kind of some of the people pushing this, but it's going to be a sort of meetup event for comics people in Tokyo, and Mulele and I are both going to be speaking at it, along with what's his name, Raul Trevino, who was also at Kaigai, and we talked about his comic. I think the one with the kind of Mexican Day of the Dead
Right.
aesthetic to it.
It's kind of a sketchbook or art book rather than a comic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as well as we can at the time we're recording this, I thought maybe we'd give sort of a preview of what we're planning to talk about. For me, I mean, they asked me to talk about the podcast, about deconstructing comics and critiquing comics. So I've been sort of trying to write up a history, but I'm going to have to go back over it, I think. I need to make sure that it's going to be interesting to someone other than me. I've been trying to kind of pick out like what were sort of the turning points in the podcast. When did sort of the direction of it change a little bit? And it's maybe sort of easier to do that in the earlier stages where, first it was you, me, and Brandon.
Yeah.
And then you went to LA and it was just me and Brandon. And then Brandon went to New Jersey, and that was actually maybe the most important change. Because at that point, when you were back in Tokyo but too far away to meet up every week, and Brandon was gone, then the podcast became more kind of changeable from week to week.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was me with Brandon on Skype. Sometimes you and I would meet in a coffee shop. Then I started like talking to other people and doing interviews. That was a big change, there like in 2007, 2008, so long ago. But then from that point, then I gradually got interviews with somewhat more famous comics people and started doing conventions. Well, I went to Emerald City in 2011, and then then we started to have events in Tokyo that I could cover, Kaigai and then Cat. So anyway, I'm kind of trying to map all that out in a way that will be interesting. So how are you coming on yours?
I had a couple of ideas to talk about. I mean, they originally asked me to talk about Kickstarter. I'm not sure if I want to really get into all of it because I don't feel like my Kickstarters have been wildly successful. They've just kind of they've made their goals, but that's about it. But rather, it might be interesting to talk about not giving up on comics, because I think that there's a large section of competent artists that don't get that choice job and don't get that Eisner Award, and they do comics because that's what they love to do. Maybe they're not masters of marketing or connecting with others, but they still do the comics. I mean, I would consider myself to be very much of that ilk, and but I persist, and I may be talking a little bit about that and why, and just kind of to reset the vision, I guess, of some people. I don't know, maybe people don't have the idea of becoming a superstar in comics. Maybe that's an old idea. But I mean, it's not to say that you don't have to make money or that you shouldn't make money, but it's the fact of, well, is that the reason why you're here? I don't think it is.
No, but if you can make money at it, then you can put more time into it. You don't have to be tied up with some other day job.
Sure, but does that mean that you have to work for Marvel or one of those companies, or can you do other things? But the problem is I don't know yet. But I think it's possible. I've seen other people do it, and so I might be headed in that direction for my talk. But anyway, I'm gonna meet with the sponsors of the show and talk to them about it. Who knows? It may actually just be reduced down to, yeah, this is how you do Kickstarter. But we'll see where it goes.
Well, I think they were asking us to each do 20 minutes. So
20 minutes. God. Yeah, put your artwork on the web and press go on the Kickstarter and you're done. Yeah. All right, 20 minutes. Maybe I can do that.
So, yeah, and I'll put a link in the show notes to more information about the event also, if anyone listening is in Tokyo and would like to go to it this coming Thursday. And if you'd like us to critique your comic, send a PDF or a link to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. At least 30 pages we will read. I'm talking like Yoda now. And then critique it on the show we will. And by the way, I'm still not working on a comic, so...
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like things in my life just kind of keep expanding to fill up any free time when I might consider doing a comic. So, don't know how that's going to go. But anyway, do you have anything else?
No, that's it, man. I'm good.
Okay. All right. So, till next time, this is Tim.
I'm Mulele.
And we'll see you next time on Critiquing Comics. Next week on Deconstructing Comics, an interview with Prabal Perkayastha, author of Flirting with Death, a book in which he tried to capture music in the structure of a comic, and a discussion of the French graphic novel Blank Slate, written by Mulele and drawn by Penelope Bagiu, a book which asks, what would you do if you found yourself on a bench along a city street and with no memory of who you are? See you then.